He is an ordinary hunter, unrecognized and forgotten by everyone. But one day in the dungeon he receives a mysterious phone that gives him access to the channel of the gods' coaches. Now he can master the powers of the deities and change his destiny. But, for money, will he be able to rise from the very bottom and become a legend? Let's find out. Kan Dokal, a famous blogger and B-class hunter, shouted, "Hey idiot, did you turn on the camera?" The protagonist replied that he was doing it right now. The blogger called him an idiot again, but when the camera started working he greeted the subscribers and said, "Welcome to the AniRaid channel. Today's monster is C+ class. This video is about how to attack Arachne." He pointed to the monsters above him and added, "Arachnes live in groups like ants, but they are not spiders from their planet. It does not attack immediately, but spits webs." Before he could finish speaking, his lackey, Kim Ji-woo, excitedly shouted, "Monsters do not spit, they shoot." The monster's paw darted towards the blogger, but he managed to put out his sword and shouted, "Everything went wrong, we must cut this out later." Mang Si-woo, who was in charge of filming and editing, agreed, but noted that this was impossible. Arachne usually use indirect attacks, first wrapping the victim in webs, and then injecting poison to slowly kill the victim. That's why the monsters wouldn't rush forward. Dokal turned around and yelled in irritation, "Idiot! He's running forward again." He was about to continue, but the blogger hit the monster with his sword and cut the second one. Then he stood on the corpses and yelled, "What the hell?" He said it spits out webs first. MC thought this was a last resort for Arachne when they had nothing to lose. At that moment, Dokal grabbed him by the shirt and was indignant. Will he continue to act like he's innocent? He apologized, but the blogger hit him in the chest and yelled, "Apologies don't solve everything." He almost died because of him. He needs to gather information better. Dokal turned around and cursed, "Damn. He's useless without special features." The protagonist thought, he's awakened. But the ability he got has no special features. It is useless for hunters. So he decided to analyze monsters and teach others how to attack it. Dokal scratched his ear and said, "That freak almost died because of that brat. If it weren't for him, everyone would have died." His assistants, trembling with fear, called him, and he asked in surprise, "What?" Suddenly, a huge eye of the monster appeared behind him, and a paw slashed forward. The hunters realized that this was an elite monster, and they needed to run. Everyone started running, and Dokal, dropping his sword, thought, is he really going to die? If he wants to escape, he needs a bait. It will be him, Si-woo. He turned around and kicked the protagonist in the face, causing him to fall. The hunter said that it was because of his bad information, and he should take responsibility. MC, breathing heavily, raised himself on his hands and said, "Idiot." At that moment, the monster was close, and the protagonist realized that he could not move. He looked at the monster's mouth and thought, is he going to die? Memories came to his mind. He was standing by his mother's hospital bed. She extended her hand and said that he must protect Soa. At that moment, he realized that he could not die here. For the sake of his little sister, he had to survive. Grabbing the sword, he rose to his feet and turned to face the monster. He was sure that he could handle this. Swinging his weapon, he shouted, "He will not give up." Suddenly, he saw a flash of energy and flew back, shouting, "What is happening?" Turning around, he saw a hunter whose body was radiating powerful energy. He thought, who is this? The next moment, another hunter appeared, who shouted, "Where is he? An idiot." He concentrated energy in his hand and the protagonist did not understand what was happening. The hunter swung his fist and shouted, "Here." He will stop running. His opponent also concentrated energy and aimed a punch. The protagonist was confused as to why they were fighting. The next moment, a powerful explosion thundered and he was surprised. Such power? He asked, what was going on? When the opponents moved away from each other, he realized that in front of him were those who made even Arachnes and elite monsters tremble. They began to attack again, and MC tried to close himself off from the powerful bursts of energy. 2 against 1? This is insane. One of the hunters kicked his opponent in the chest, then a powerful column of fiery energy was directed at him. He was indignant and shouted, "Stop hiding. He will not let this continue." His opponent answered, "No, they have a long way to go until this is over." He concentrated energy. His opponent did the same and asked, "Does he want to go all the way?" They released energy, and 2 powerful forces collided. One of the hunters shouted, "He will not come out unscathed either." His opponent answered that he does not care. Then he turned to the protagonist and explained, he left him a chance. He should forgive him for dragging him into this. His rival shouted in surprise, "Is this really true?" At that moment, their energies merged into one sphere, and a powerful explosion occurred. The hunter told the protagonist, "It's on him." He covered his face with his hands from the explosion and, catching his breath, looked around, wondering what the hell was going on. He stepped on the phone and picked it up, asking, "Why is there a smartphone here?" The screen said, "Confirm the new manager." Then the connection check started and he was surprised. "What is this?" The device said, "Manager, position change complete." He didn't understand what was happening. Then he abruptly returned to the screen, where it said, "Welcome to GodTube, manager." After a while, the rest of the hunters got out of the dungeon and tried to catch their breath. Dokal exclaimed, "Damn, how unlucky is he? What are the chances of running into an elite monster in a C+ dungeon?" Jiminchul replied that thanks to Dokal, they all survived. Duan gave him a thumbs up and added that the idea of using Siwoo as bait was brilliant. Jiwoo smiled and remarked that, as expected of a B-rank hunter, Dochul was experienced. He replied that his slogan, "They will raid everything possible," was not accidental. He was prepared for this. At that moment, the protagonist came out of the dungeon and, trying to catch his breath, shouted, "Dokal, you idiot!" The blogger thought in fear, "Siwoo?" Turning around, he asked how he could. But before he could finish speaking, MC came closer and punched him. But Dokal hit him with his elbow and then with his fist in the face. He asked, did he forget that he was an F rank? He didn't know how he survived, but he was lucky. Dokal said that he was lucky because he would have been too lazy to look for a new editor. Looking up at him, he was surprised. Was he serious? He really thinks he's going to keep working for the guy who tried to kill him? The blogger put his hand on his shoulder and replied, he was the one begging and crying, saying he needed money for his sister's medicine. He helped him out of generosity. He couldn't do this to him. He had to repay him. The MC slapped his hand away and said, if he couldn't accept it, he shouldn't let anything go. He had a habit of doing that because he was so rude. He didn't know it would help. He held a camera in his hands and talked about the video where he leaves him. Can he imagine how many views it would get if he posted it? Dochul closed his eyes, sighed, and said he knew he could just kill him here. The protagonist replied that he was being decisive. He was ready to die, but Dokal would go to jail and lose his channel. He could start. Dokal frowned and pointed at him, saying that if the video appeared anywhere, he couldn't guarantee his sister's safety. He then turned around and added that they would find a new editor. What are they doing, guys? They need to get going. MC rubbed his chin and said that if someone touched his sister, he didn't know what would happen to him. After a while, he was sitting at the computer, looked at the phone screen and asked, GodTube is the channels of the gods? NewTube is a free platform where anyone can upload videos. Of the many channels on the site, the most popular were those run by hunters. A character named Saint said that she would buy a holy sword from Hephaestus and try it on Lucifer. Thor replied, the world serpent Jormungandr in 12 minutes? They decided to watch how players beat the boss in speed. Gods from mythology, historical figures, heroes, and legendary figures. Are they really in control of all this? Suddenly he remembered recent events and thought, who is that guy? Why did he give him the phone? Everything seemed confusing. He put the phone on a stack of papers and thought, if this is true and they run channels like NewTube, then they will have at least 1 million subscribers. He decided to give it a try. The screen said justice, loyalty, and determination. To become a member, he had to watch lectures on S+ rank insight. He was surprised to see the inscription. He was subscribed to Zhuge Liang's channel. This was one of the 3 channels. He had obtained S+ rank insight. This rank only existed as a classification. It was not a real rank. People who fought against demons, 13 heroes. Did he really get this just by subscribing to a channel? No way. If it was true, he should have felt something, but there was no change on his hand. He guessed that it improved his observation and intelligence. It was hard to notice the difference immediately. Then Hercules appeared on the screen with an offer for 10,000 subscribers, free personal training, and how to raise the House of Zeus. The protagonist clicked subscribe and said that he would notice the difference after that. The system reported that he had subscribed to Hercules' channel. He had obtained SS rank superhuman strength. He let out a surprised cry and slammed his fist into the laptop, causing it to crack. Looking at the destroyed thing, he exclaimed, what? He was shocked. Did he really get SS rank? The system reported that he had obtained superhuman strength. The mastery of this power had increased slightly. The mastery of S+ rank insight had also increased slightly due to hard thinking. The protagonist wondered if he needed to raise the skills to 100% to fully master these abilities. MC picked up his phone and decided to watch a video of Hercules' personal training. In the video, Hercules lifted a huge column and exclaimed, yes, this is amazing. There is energy concentrated in his hands. He said it was leg stimulation. He then pushed off, raised the column above himself and exclaimed, this is too good. The protagonist was shocked and couldn't believe his eyes. He thought, what is this? How is he doing this? He pressed the unsubscribe button and said, now he understands why he only has 1 subscriber. He will never be able to do that. The next second, the system notified that subscription is impossible. He was surprised. Hercules, pointing his finger at the camera, laughed loudly and said, hey, he can come whenever he wants, but he can't leave whenever he wants. The protagonist shook his head in fear and tried to unsubscribe again, but the system repeated that it was impossible. He asked why he couldn't unsubscribe, and Hercules answered that in that case they would see each other tomorrow. The next moment, the protagonist received a call. He was surprised. Who could it be? He asked what he wanted. Dokal answered that he thought he had blocked him. The protagonist was surprised and asked what he wanted. He answered, he has nowhere else to go, right? MC asked why he was calling if he wanted to make fun of him. He answered that he just wanted to talk about business. The protagonist said, business. Yeah. Dokal told him to be polite since they used to work together. The protagonist said that he needed to say what he wanted and that he didn't have time for idle talk. The guy got indignant and asked if he wanted to join the SH Group. The protagonist was surprised. The SH Group is the #1 financial company in Korea. Their granddaughter recently awakened 2 hunter abilities in herself. The MC assumed that they were also into hunting. Dochol assumed that they were expanding their business because they wanted to see what it was like. The protagonist replied in the negative. Dochol was surprised. Seriously? Then he would pay him 50,000 per video. The protagonist was surprised because it was 10 times more than he usually gets paid. He asked if he wanted to join now. The protagonist smiled and still said no. The blogger was indignant. Hey, it's 10 times more than he usually gets. It's good for him. How much does he want? The protagonist replied, 50 million. Dokal was indignant. 50 million? Is he crazy? Does he really think he's worth that much? He thought that SH Group was already paying him so much. A few moments later, the system reported that the hero's insight skill had increased slightly, by 0.2%. The MC decided to guess why SH Group wanted to work with him and not other rank hunters. He asked him what he would say. The protagonist replied that it was obvious. His granddaughter had just obtained 2 S-rank traits. SH Group chairman Han Dae-san wasn't going to just sit and watch. He wanted his granddaughter to learn how to hunt first. And what is the foundation for hunters? It's hunting monsters. The reason their channel had 210,000 subscribers and was able to make money was because of the protagonist's unique strategies. SH Group chairman approached him not because of him, but because of his skills. Dokal said in annoyance, and yet 50 million is too much. The protagonist asked if he wanted to. Dokal gritted his teeth in anger. The protagonist put his phone on the table and added, if he can't get a loan or credit, he should look for someone else. The next day, they were in a B-rank dungeon. The protagonist folded his arms and asked when he was going to transfer the rest of the money. Dokal looked at his phone screen and replied that he already said he would send it as soon as this was over. When was Han Charon coming? They then turned around abruptly, and she, who was standing behind them, introduced herself and added that she would be joining this raid. She then suggested that they go right away. The protagonist was surprised. This girl is Charon? She is so beautiful, but it will be difficult to get close to her. Well, as long as he gets his money, he is just doing his job. After a while, a huge monster appeared in front of them, and Charon explained that it was a black troll. Dokal, raising his index finger up, noted that she was right. This monster is classified as a B+ rank monster. It may be a B rank monster, but with regeneration abilities close to immortality, those who don't know how to attack it may lose their lives. The commentary said that he was telling her how to attack the monster, just like Siwoo had told him. Then he added the strategy that everyone knows, which is to rip apart the black troll's entire body, destroy the heart, and cut off the head until it can regenerate. Charon then pulled out her sword from its sheath and ran to attack. She kicked off the ground and flew into the air, swinging her sword to pierce the monster's heart. The next second, she spun in the air and the monster's head was separated from its body. The boys stared at her in surprise, and she assured him that it was easy. Dokal clapped his hands and said with a smile that he didn't think she would catch it so flawlessly with minimal knowledge, as expected of an S-rank hunter. She waved her sword and said that it flattered her. He then looked at her sword and wondered what kind of sword it was. MC pointed at her weapon and guessed that it must be the Aurelian weapon that he had only heard about. How much would it cost? She looked closer at the sword and said, about 20 billion? The boys yelped in surprise, and she pointed her thumb back and added that they shouldn't end with one black troll, they should move on. An hour later, Karen stepped in a pool of blood and said that she thought she understood a little now. She thought that there were no more trolls. Maybe they should end it here? Dokal took her hand and bowed, saying that she had worked hard. She confirmed this and added that she was leaving. He thought that this would be a good opportunity to be acquainted with the Hunters Guild, but he couldn't do anything, and now he's going to lose 50 million because of that idiot Siwoo. The protagonist guessed that's what he must be thinking. The next second, they heard a terrifying sound, and Charon asked what it was. Dokal smirked and thought that this was his chance. He then said that judging by its size, it wasn't an elite monster. The protagonist realized that it wasn't an elite monster. The next second, a huge creature appeared next to them and slammed its huge hand on the ground right in front of them, and MC realized that it was a boss monster. The creature then swung its fist, But Sharon swung her sword and held it in front of the fist, trying to delay the monster's attack. The others turned around and started running away in fear, until the monster swung its hand again, knocking the hunter back. It then threw several rocks forward, piercing the necks of the fleeing people. Dokal, continuing to run, was breathing heavily and thought, the SH group, or wherever it was, he must escape from this place. He must run. He cannot die. He must quickly escape from this place. The next second, he was surprised. It swung its fist, and the hunter trembled in fear and said that he was dead. But at the last second, Sharon again put her sword in front of the monster's fist, and she was thrown to the side again. She hit the wall, covering it with cracks. Then she saw the fist approaching her again, and realized that she must dodge. She ran up the outstretched fist and, swinging her weapon, attacked the monster. Then it turned its gaze to her. Seeing this, she was horrified. The fist was approaching her at great speed, and she flew back again. But, taking a sitting position, she covered herself with her sword. The protagonist at this moment understood that they would not be able to win, even if it was Sharon. No matter if she is a hunter with 2 S-rank traits, she's just a newbie who lacks experience now. They can't win. The choice he can make is to leave her and run. Otherwise, he will die. Or believe in the SS-rank superpowers on GodTube. Who are they? He didn't know exactly what rank he was now. Suddenly, Dokal ran in front of him and MC looked after him, surprised. He remembered the recent events and Sharon was holding her sword up with effort, blocking the monster's attack. The protagonist knew that they couldn't win and he needed to run. He pushed off the ground and rushed forward, knowing that there was no other way to survive. Then he shouted, "Here!" He thought, money or prestige, these things are useless when he dies. But if he leaves Sharon here and runs, he will become the same as that idiot Dokal. He concentrated his energy into his fist and punched his opponent. The monster looked at him in surprise. Sharon didn't understand how he was able to block the monster's attack. Who was this person? Behind him, it seemed like the spirit of Hercules was standing. The monster then pulled out a fist from the ceiling and aimed at the hunters again. The protagonist met his blow with his hand. Sharon kicked off the ground, swung her weapon and jumped on the monster, piercing the boss's body. She spun in the air, landed on her other hand and pierced the monster's body again. She then jumped down and stood next to the protagonist. He asked, "Is it over?" He used his insight ability and realized that something was wrong. Boss species are species that undergo double transformation, so the physical transformation will occur naturally. The next second, the monster's head began to grow back into its body, and he shouted, "Be careful!" The monster grabbed the huntress, and she screamed in pain. The protagonist realized that it was over if she died, but he couldn't do anything if the powers he got from GodTube were real. Even now, when it was his power. He grabbed the monster's finger and realized that he could buy himself some time. Sharon turned to him and shouted at him to run. He shouted that she should aim for the heart. Karen tried to get out of the monster's fist. The next second, she succeeded. She got to her feet and shouted that she understood everything. She ran to attack, while the protagonist held the monster's arm, cutting it in the way. Then she swung and pierced the monster's heart. The protagonist thought he could hold out for another half a second. There was no time to explain how to attack the ogre. He shouted that the ogre had 2 hearts. Sharon turned around in surprise, but MC was sure that she would figure it out with her 6th sense. The monster swung his arm, and Sharon flew back. She spun in the air again and swung her weapon. The protagonist thought that she should understand. She aimed right at the right place and pierced the second heart. The protagonist shouted, "Now!" He concentrated energy in his hand, swung his fist and ran to attack, shouting, "It should just stop." The system reported that his skill had increased slightly. Karen jumped to the ground, and the protagonist's fist was reflected in the monster's eyes. Sharon thought with relief that they had won. But then MC approached her, covered in blood. He collapsed on the ground right in front of her, and she asked in confusion, "Who is he?" Sometime later, the protagonist woke up in a hospital. Seeing Sharon, he was surprised. "A hospital?" She sat down next to him and apologized for disturbing him. He asked what she was doing here. Sharon explained that she brought him here because he was badly injured. She leaned closer and asked how he was feeling. The protagonist felt uneasy and recoiled. Sharon touched his forehead and assumed that he had a fever. Then she moved away and asked what his name was. The protagonist introduced himself, but then thought, why doesn't she know his name? She should have learned all the details when he was brought here. Sharon replied that she wanted to hear it from him in person. The protagonist was surprised. What did she do? Read his mind? He remembered that she had a 6th sense like an S-class. Sharon added that he was probably not himself after waking up, and offered him to join her team. The protagonist asked why she wanted to take him on the team. Sharon replied that it was because of his recent battle with the ogre. She asked if he would agree to a yearly salary of 1 billion won. The MC exclaimed, "A billion?" Charon added that they would also split the spoils from the monsters equally. The protagonist thought about such a proposal. He remembered his younger sister who was sick and was lying in this hospital. Charon promised to cover the cost of his treatment if he agreed to work for her. The protagonist asked what he had to do to deserve such conditions. Charon asked him to come up with a strategy to fight the monsters. That night, MC, lying on his side, wondered if he should have refused the offer. He remembered his refusal and decided that Charon still owed him for saving her life. She promised to pay him back by paying for his sister's treatment. The protagonist decided to try to believe in his own strength and capabilities. He remembered GodTube, where he received superhuman abilities. He realized that he should not miss the chance to change his life and help his sister. He looked at his younger sister, Manhwa, lying on the next bed. She suffered from a blood disease after an unexpected breakthrough in the dungeon. Modern medicine could not completely cure her, but it could alleviate the symptoms. He knew that with GodTube and acquiring traits, he could find a cure. However, the ingredients were incredibly expensive. He decided to make money by finishing a video for 50 million won. While watching the video, he noticed the price of the sword and thought about making equipment. It could make him billions, but he only had one subscription, and to get a second one, he needed to join the community. It cost 1 million. The only way to make a weapon was to study metallurgy. He noticed Hephaestus's channel with an offer for 99 improved Mjolnirs. The protagonist clicked the subscribe button and gained access to God's metallurgy. He was surprised to see an SS class. Hephaestus, hitting the weapon with a hammer, shouted about the need to be prepared for failure. MC thought about the behavior of the gods. The system reported that the incorrect knowledge of metallurgy was corrected, and his proficiency level went up. He did pull-ups on the horizontal bar, and the nurses watching him noticed the improvement in his body. The nurse confirmed that his recovery was fast, even for a hunter. He was told that he could be discharged tomorrow. He was surprised by the speed of his recovery and thought about the consequences of frequent use of super strength. The protagonist decided not to slack off in training to avoid muscle fiber breakdown. His sister came up to him, and he turned around in surprise. She leaned over and asked if he heard that he was being discharged tomorrow. He scratched the back of his head and confirmed it. She sighed and, putting her hand on her chest, told him that when he was admitted to the hospital, she was very worried. She thought his condition was serious, but didn't they say he had to be in the hospital for at least a month? He was being discharged in a week. He thought that Soa must be disappointed since he was being discharged first. He smirked, walked up to her and patted her head. He said that she shouldn't miss treatment just because he was not around. She didn't have to worry about money, at least here. Soa replied that she knew she was getting free treatment thanks to Charon. She then added that Charon Uni had asked to be called that. She didn't have any younger siblings, but she looked like one. He was surprised. Charon? When had she seen her? She replied that she sometimes came when he was training. She asked if he was okay and left. He folded his arms with a smirk and asked, "Really? Someone who should be very busy due to her hunter activities comes to visit him? Maybe she still wanted to recruit him?" Soa sheepishly suggested that maybe she was doing this because she liked him. He looked away and replied that he didn't think so. She countered, "No. He was so popular. The nurses were always talking about him." He stated that she should forget about it. She should stop talking nonsense and quickly go inside. He had somewhere to go. Soa was surprised. "Where?" He smirked, clenched his fist and replied, "To earn money." After a while, MC looked around the dungeon and asked himself, is it because he is hunting monsters for the first time? He clenched his fist and decided to calm down. Suddenly, he heard sounds. He realized that the monsters were close. It was the goblin lair in the F-rank dungeon. The goblins rushed at him with fists. He ran forward, realizing that the monsters act in groups, but there were too many of them. The goblins chased him, swinging their weapons. One of the monsters swung. The protagonist crouched, dodging the blow. He hit the monster with his fist. It shattered into pieces. A few drops of blood splashed on his face. He was surprised. Did the monster explode? Maybe he's stronger than he thought? MC looked at the remaining goblins resolutely. They may attack, but he is ready for it. After a while, he found himself in a forge. He threw several goblin corpses on the table and asked how many can be made from this? The owner of the forge, Seo Palguang, shouted in surprise. "What should I do?" He asked for ingredients, not scraps. While he teaches him how to smelt, he must follow him. Palguang swung his hammer and shouted, "He must watch carefully. A hammer is not only power." He devoted most of his youth to studying metallurgy. He is already in his 40s, but he does not give up. Palguang said that just because he has good materials does not mean that he will easily obtain A-rank or S-rank equipment. Now he is a talented and passionate awakened with A-rank agility. The protagonist watched his actions in surprise. The blacksmith said that it is his turn now. MC took the hammer from his hands and replied, "Yes, sir." Palguang folded his arms and thought, his name is Siwoo? He did not ask for equipment to be made for him, or for him to join the guild. He did not even ask for rent. He allowed it out of curiosity. Palguang said to the protagonist, "Look at this guy with a hammer." These days, people think that metallurgy is an easy skill like in a game, but he spent 20 years to reach this level. Moreover, this boy is always looking at his phone. He must have watched videos on YouTube and thinks that it is easy. But he is deeply mistaken. The next second, he looked forward in surprise. Soon, the representative of Soyun, Kim Soyun, came to them. Palguang, holding a sword, asked, "Is it her?" She answered, "Of course. Which girl besides her would come to this forge?" He answered, "She could entrust it to someone else. She comes herself every time. She said that she works with the best blacksmith in Korea, so she should come in person." He answered as befits a businesswoman, and even learned to flatter. She asked, "Flatter?" "She is Soyun, a representative of a company that deals only with the best goods." She then took off her backpack and added that, in any case, she has the ingredients he spoke of last time. As for the price. Before she could finish speaking, he noticed that it was wrapped in cloth. The blades are sharp, so he needs to check carefully. She said that they decided to supply equipment for the SH group. She screamed, "Excuse me, can he be a little quieter?" The protagonist replied, "Okay." She thought, "This idiot, what is he doing?" She picked up one of the swords and asked, "What? He calls this a weapon?" The owner of the forge asked what she thought. She replied that the blade is dull and roughly shaped. Who would use this? He asked if that was true. But what would she say if it was made from the bones of goblins and kobolds? She asked in surprise, "What?" He added that the material was in worse condition, and it was made by a person who picked up a hammer for the first time today. She assumed that he had accepted an apprentice. He replied that he had tried to make such an assumption, but his work was too incredible to say that it was his first time holding a hammer. In any case, he had never seen anyone make a weapon out of such a material. And yet he refused to accept him as an apprentice. Soyun asked in surprise, "What?" She turned around, looked at the protagonist, and thought about it. At that moment, the protagonist created a new weapon, and the system reported that its level had increased slightly, plus 0.4%. She thought, equipment found in the trash? MC said that he managed to make a weapon. She asked if he was going to sell it. He turned around in surprise. She introduced herself and extended her hand. He thought, Soyun Company? Yes, he had heard of it before. A company that specializes in the hunting business and considers trust and reliability as its core value. As a result, it is quite famous in the hunting industry. She said that they only work with the best products in Korea. If he was thinking of selling, she would like to buy. He asked how much she could give. She said 1 million apiece. After making a deal with Soyun, Siwoo started making weapons like crazy. After a while, they officially signed a contract with SH Group. The protagonist raised his hand and said, "He did well, didn't he?" Soyun shouted, "It's not just good. The delivery times were met, the quantity and quality of the equipment are impeccable. If it weren't for him, they would have been in big trouble. Mr. Siwoo, all thanks to him." They took each other's hands. She added that if he needed anything, he should just say so. She would do anything to get it for him. She reached for her phone and said that he should check his account. He was surprised. Account? He looked at the phone screen where it said deposit and started counting. 10, 102,800. He realized it was less than he expected. She asked, "Excuse me? What 2,800? Please." He has to check again. He asked, "Yes." He looked at the screen again and shouted in surprise, 280 million? At this moment, he was reborn as a slave of money. After a while, he sat on a chair and looked at the account on his phone. He thought that he could subscribe to GodTube to please Soa. He started searching for channels. Huato is a legendary doctor, the divine physician. Hippocrates is an ancient healer, the father of medicine. Hojong is the creator of the concept of Eastern medicine, the root of it. He knew that subscribing to all 3 channels would cost 300 million a month, but in his situation, he could only choose one. He folded his arms across his chest and thought for a moment, then slapped himself in the face and shouted, "It doesn't matter." He pressed the subscribe button. After a while, Palguang entered the forge. He said, "It can't be helped. Fragile materials are difficult to polish. We need to keep polishing to a minimum." MC looked at him in surprise. Palguang added, "Although precision machining can be done, it requires absolute precision." At this moment, Soyun entered the forge and shouted that she had come. The master asked why she kept coming here. She replied that it was because of Master Siwoo. The protagonist turned his attention to her and said that he had been waiting for her. She smiled sheepishly and asked if he had been waiting for her. He replied that she had promised to get whatever he needed. He asked if it could be gotten. She replied, "Of course." Then she began to recite mountain incense, saxifrage, century-old ginseng, century-old rune flower, soapwort. The MC asked if it was hard to get. She replied that she could get it, but it would be expensive. He asked how expensive it would be. She replied that it was about 300 million won, but she could give a discount of 20 million. The protagonist's body felt like an electric shock had shot through him. He screamed in bewilderment. He realized that he needed it to level up his divine medical art. Subscribe to the S+ rank, Huato Divine Medical Art. It was hard for him to level up on his own because he didn't know when to hand in the medicinal herbs or whether it was for sale. If it weren't for Miss Soyun, he probably would have never gotten it. She asked if it was worth buying. He answered yes, but then scratched his head. He had received 284 million from Soyun, but he gave her 280 million, and at the end of the month, he would lose the current balance of 4 million. The subscription fee was 100 million. To pay for it, he needed more money. But even if he earned more by making equipment, how could he make hundreds of millions? Suddenly, a memory popped into his head. YouTube. The guy on the subway looked at his phone and said, "Nothing to watch, seriously." But his attention was caught by a video from the author of World Conqueror. He asked, "What's wrong with him?" Then he pressed play. The protagonist, dressed in a monster costume, began, "Did they know that hippos are not water horses?" The guy was surprised. "What's wrong with him?" He continued, "The monsters they see are called hippodons in Korea and hippos in other countries. It looks like hippos, but the character for horse is used to describe it. Hippos are not actually members of the horse family. They are members of the hippopotamus family, more specifically, the cetaceans." Going into detail would give him a headache, so he'll stop there. Anyway, he took out a red cloth and said that he would show you how to subdue a hippo. First, you need to excite it with the red cloth. Cows get nervous from the color red, and the main thing is to excite it. He waved the cloth and shouted, "Come to him." The hippos looked in his direction. The creature's eyes lit up, and the hippos ran straight at him. Then he shouted how to beat a hippo. Secondly, you just need to hit it and catch it. The guy was surprised, and this is his strategy? Meanwhile, the protagonist ran at the hippos and started attacking. Soon he was standing among the corpses of the monsters, gave a thumbs up and said, "What will they say? Easy, right?" The guy was amazed. Then the MC swung his fist and shouted, "Rice noodles! Buckwheat noodles!" While shouting this, he continued to hit the monsters and then gave a thumbs up and said that if the strategy was useful, they should like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. There were comments under the video. "This guy is crazy. Can you beat him with your bare hands?" Hilarious. Their hippo fainted. Views, 3,628. Subscribers of the channel Conqueror of the World, 243. The protagonist looked at the screen, smirked, and said, "As planned." Subscribers continued to arrive, and viewers in the comments laughed. The protagonist noticed that they liked the concept of the previous video, but he thought about it. The reaction was only good because of the algorithm. This can't go on. He needs to move on. Stimulation requires more and more intensity to keep interest. This is his specialty. Analyzing monsters and developing strategies is his job. 1 million subscribers is not just a dream, but there is a problem. The MC was sitting at the computer when suddenly drops of blood fell on his palms. He was surprised. A nosebleed? Clutching his head, he muttered, "Need to edit the video, dungeon raid and delivery too." Then he staggered, hit his head on the table and fell to the floor. He realized that he worked too much. Opening his eyes, he asked where he was. The ceiling in his room? He sat down on the bed and thought, did he pass out? But thanks to Hercules' superpowers, it only ended with him fainting. He had to edit the video quickly. How much time had passed? Looking at his phone, he exclaimed, he had been unconscious for a whole day. He thought that at this rate he would die of exhaustion before he could earn any money. He needed to hire an editor. After some time, he was still sitting at a table in a cafe. Looking at his phone, he was surprised. He didn't think there would be so many applicants. Was it because of the high salary? The application was as hot as an idol audition. The basic salary was 3 million, plus incentives for views. Money was good. He had to choose the one who brought in more money. The sound effects in this video were appropriate, and the editing was better than his. But why wasn't he coming? He read the message. The meeting was scheduled. Wasn't he a complete ajushi? He might be an experienced specialist. Where was he? He realized that there was no need to rush, just a little more. After a while, he slammed the table and exclaimed, "Damn, you idiot." At that moment, Pak Doku came up to him. She was there for an interview for the editing position. He was surprised. "Doku?" He thought she was an ajushi. Then she apologized again, and he asked the reason for her being late. She replied that she had been editing a video for her application until late at night and forgot to pack a lunchbox for her younger brother. She couldn't read his message because she was in a hurry. He was surprised. Editing a video? She explained that she was talking about the video attached to her application. He assumed that meant she edited the video he submitted in just a day. She replied that it took about 3 hours. He was surprised. 3 hours? She thought there was something wrong with him. He looked up at her, and she exclaimed in fear. He then asked when she could start work. She replied, right now. He thought that it usually takes him 8 hours to edit a video, but 3 hours? If 3 hours per video, how much will it cost? He then said that according to the ad, 2 videos a week is the standard. Sometimes he uploads 3, but of course, for an extra fee. He then extended his hand forward and declared that from now on, she would be under his supervision as an editor. She banged her head on the table and exclaimed that she would work hard. At that moment, people ran past them shouting, "What is this all of a sudden? A dungeon breakthrough." The protagonist was surprised. A dungeon breakthrough. People continued to run down the street. It was reported that a C-rank dungeon breakthrough had occurred. Residents of nearby houses should quickly evacuate. Daku, who followed the protagonist outside, exclaimed, "Boss, they should also quickly evacuate." He replied, "Editor Daku, didn't she say that she could work right now?" She was surprised. "Sorry?" He turned to her with a sly smile, handed her his phone and told her to take it and follow him. She asked where they were going. He said, "To make money." She was confused. "What?" As he continued to run, he turned around and shouted, "Video!" She was surprised, then turned on the video and saw monsters coming out of the gate. The protagonist shouted, "Rice noodles, large portion!" He ran straight at the monsters, punched a few, and said, "Subscribers, they need to like and subscribe. And don't forget about notifications." He then wiped the blood on his face and asked if it was okay to start making real money now. Then, specialist hunters arrived on the scene. They shouted at the residents to evacuate into the buildings. They shouldn't stay outside. The hunters looked ahead in surprise, seeing the MC fighting the monsters. Soon, he was standing on a mountain of corpses. Turning to the camera, he gave a thumbs up and said if they liked the video, click like and subscribe. Turn on notifications. Daku later watched the video and thought, what the hell? She read the comments where people praised the protagonist's skill and noted that the video was neatly edited. Daku wondered why he was so popular. She made her own version of his video, but she still didn't understand the secret to his success. But she knew one thing, there are some real psychos on YouTube. Will she be able to achieve the same success? At that moment, her sister, who was eating chicken, shouted, "Unni, the chicken is so delicious." They left some for her too. Her brother suggested eating together. They started arguing and he shouted, "She already ate one. This is for Daku." She thought, right, I have to try hard at least for the sake of my younger siblings. Later, the protagonist was working in the forge again. He was looking at another sword he had made from the loot he had gotten from the dungeon. This equipment was made from materials obtained from C-class monsters. He hoped that it would help him. Suddenly, the system reported a slight increase in divine metallurgy. He had created equipment that was free. MC was surprised. Equipment that was free? But he thought that his skill had increased to 1.4%. Considering how much it had increased, it was an incredible number. At that moment, Soyun came up to him and said in surprise, "Wow, his equipment is getting better." The forge owner was shocked and asked how this was possible. How could someone who had started less than a month ago have this? The protagonist laughed and replied that he had a long way to go. Soyun asked with a smile if he was planning on selling it. He gave her a thumbs up and said that she knew how to sell it for the highest price. She suggested that he just leave it to her. By the way, he looks a lot better now. He asked if that was true. She replied that the bags under his eyes used to reach his ears. He laughed awkwardly, and she added that she used to be unable to tell whether he was a human or a zombie. But now, he looks like a human. The protagonist pulled his cheek and thought that since Daku started editing his videos, he really had more time to sleep. Although he was still busy, last time after paying the salary for the dangerous work, he had little money left for the staff. But helping to film a video is not the job of an editor, so he really should pay her that much. Dokal was trash. He had no complaints about her editing skills. Since she was trying so hard, he was very grateful to her. Then he asked, "Miss Soyun, what about the medicinal herbs he asked for last time?" She clapped her hands and took out a bag, saying that she received everything. This was Siwoo's first request. He was surprised. Already? This is unbelievable. She replied that she only sells the best products from Korea. He thought, what does this have to do with it? Then he picked up the bag and asked how much it would cost. She replied that it was 212.44 million won. He smiled awkwardly and said that it was a huge amount. She replied that she would give him a discount since it was his request and that it would be 200 million won. He thanked her, and she thought about it and asked, but where would he put so many medicinal herbs? He replied that it was for clinical trials. After some time, he watched a video where Huato was talking about herbalism. He said that it refers to purified natural medicines obtained from animal, plant, or mineral sources. The forms of it are mainly divided into decoctions, powders, tablets, and creams. These are the most common forms. The video was talking about herbs. Herbs refer to natural substances that have medicinal effects that are distributed among the roots, stems, bark, fruits, and seeds of plants. Although the quantity is small, they play an important role as a type of compound drug. Therefore, when using a specific form, certain types can also be called herbs. Therefore, it is incorrect to call one fixed form exclusively herbs. The protagonist was confused. What was he talking about? At this rate, he would not be able to improve his divine medical art proficiency. The next second, the system reported that he had obtained high-level knowledge. The mastery of insight had increased slightly. He thought that this was the mastery of the wrong skill. Then, he looked at the screen in surprise and realized, in simple terms, this refers to the study of medicinal herbs used to treat diseases, and the study and acquisition of knowledge about the effect of it. The next second, the system reported his understanding of the definition of herbalism. The proficiency of the divine medical art had increased slightly. He wondered, why complicate simple words? After a while, the system reported the preparation of a decoction that was beneficial to his body. The proficiency level in the divine medical art had increased again. The protagonist looked at the decoction and doubted, is it edible? If the decoction is beneficial, then it may also be harmful. He decided to try it. After drinking the contents of the cup, he thought it was just a decoction made with divine medicine art. Could it kill him? The next second he collapsed to the floor and muttered, the price of his herbs. He reached for his phone, and the system reported that he had consumed the decoction, which is good for the body. The mastery level of superpowers increased slightly. He was surprised. It hadn't even been 3 seconds. Soon he found himself in a dungeon, and looking up at the ceiling, he thought of vampire bats. An E+ rank monster from the bat family. He had several reasons for coming here. First, to make a video about whether bats are rats. Second, to get loot for crafting equipment. And finally, to study the disease of vampire bats. These monsters live in small groups of tens or hundreds of individuals, and various diseases are found among them. Interestingly, the bats themselves do not get sick. If it carries blood-related diseases, then finding out the reason for its resistance may provide the key to curing SOA's blood diseases. It will not be easy, but with the divine art of medicine, it is possible. Suddenly, he sensed something. They were not bats, but someone's footprints. Jumping onto the towering rocks, he decided to avoid it just in case. Soon he noticed people. They were Dokal's lackeys. How did they get here? In theory, the dungeon was assigned to him, and other hunters shouldn't have entered. But maybe it was a coincidence. These hunters were probably C-class. What were they doing in an E+ rank dungeon? They obviously came for him. There was no internet or signal in the dungeon, and no one would know if he was alive or not. But what should he do? He would know after he took them down. Minchiol, who was walking ahead, asked if he was sure that Siwoo had gotten in. Yoon replied that he was sure. He had seen him get in himself. He agreed. Jiwoo turned around and asked, but why couldn't he see him? The hunter guessed that he had died. He smirked. This idiot was a useless awakened, worse than an F-class. How confident was he to enter this dungeon alone? Although that made things easier for them. He didn't know about the rest, but he was smart. Minchiol smiled and said that he needed to come up with a plan to deal with the vampire bats. Jiwoo chuckled, but what else can a talentless guy do? Yoon added thoughtfully, after watching his video, it seems like he doesn't rely on his strategy alone. Minchiol asked as he walked forward, do they really believe this? Anyone can tell that this is either manipulation or editing. This is absurd. Could this place be a set and not a dungeon? Jiwoo chuckled, maybe. At this moment, the protagonist grabbed his shoulder and asked, where is Dokshal? The hunter was surprised, not feeling him approaching. MC added, he didn't think he would tell me this so easily, and he hoped he wouldn't answer. Minchiol shouted in confusion, where did he come from? His comrade guessed, did he decide to fight them? Jiwoo swung his sword and rushed at the protagonist and shouted, what could this useless idiot do? The next second, the protagonist punched him, and Jiwoo flew far back. He landed on the ground and looked at the protagonist in horror. The protagonist walked up to him and said, they want to know what he's going to do. Well, something like that. After that, he stepped on the hunter's head. MC kicked one of the hunters and said, -1. Yoon, holding the sword, shouted in fear, damn. His comrade replied, Siwoo, he's just an idiot. The next second, his comrade flew into the wall, and Yoon turned around and said, damn again. He threw the sword on the floor and carefully walked up to the protagonist and asked him to wait so he could tell him everything. The protagonist approached him with a smirk and said that he didn't trust the words of a man with intact limbs. He crouched down next to him and asked, did Dokal order him to be taught a lesson? He confirmed it. The protagonist asked, should he throw away the badges of honor? Yoon, whose face was covered in bruises, answered, no, that's right. The MC asked why Dokal did that and why he was interested in him. He answered uncertainly that he didn't know. The protagonist threatened with his fist, and the hunter screamed in fear. He really didn't know. The MC sighed and asked if the hunter knew where he was. He tried to answer, but the protagonist said that he could forget about it. He should take his friends and leave. The hunter was surprised. Weren't they dead? The protagonist answered that he didn't kill them, and told him to tell Dokal that the same thing would happen to him next time. He turned around, grabbed Yoon by the face and smirked. Is it hard for him to tell? The next second, a cry of pain was heard. After some time, the beaten hunters stood in front of Dokal. The protagonist hugged Yoon and said, "Dochol, long time no see, a month already?" Jiwoo put his hand out and shouted that it was a misunderstanding. His comrade added that it was Siwoo who ordered them. It was unfair. The protagonist put his hand on Yoon's shoulder and gave him a thumbs up, saying that his plan to lure Dochol was good. The hunter shouted in fear that he was set up. The protagonist said that his request was to kill Dokal, and he would definitely do it. The hunter ran in the opposite direction and shouted no. The others followed suit and shouted an apology to Dokal. MC asked Dokal, he was the only one left now, right? He shook his head and added, so he must have treated them well. How badly did he treat them if they personally asked him to kill him? Dokal, gritting his teeth in anger, asked, how could he? How could an E-rank hunter have such power? The protagonist replied that he was not sure. He had to ask Dokal one thing, why was he doing this to him? Dokal asked if there was a reason he should tell. He smirked and replied, of course not. He then kicked off the ground and charged forward, swinging his fist. His opponent also raised his sword, preparing to attack. The protagonist noted that he did not trust the words of a man with intact limbs. The opponent thought that he was certainly different, but considering he was a B-rank hunter, it did not matter. The opponent swung his sword. MC ducked, and the opponent was surprised. Did he dodge? The protagonist kicked off the ground, flipping in midair, and jumped back a few times. Dokal asked if his reflexes were better than he thought. The protagonist replied, him and his brutality. He realized that he was scared. Even a decent blow could break the sword. But it seemed that he still lacked the skill to block the sword of a B-rank hunter. The opponent extended his sword in front of him and charged forward. MC backed away, thinking that the opponent's attacks were fast but simple. He could dodge it. Then MC swung his fist and remembered the past. He worked as an editor for Dokal. He was treated like a slave. He often watched Dokal hunt monsters, countless times. He constantly analyzed Dokal's habits, tendencies, and behavior. The next second, the system reported an increase in insight. The protagonist's fist collided with the opponent's sword. They dodged several more times. Dokal was surprised. What? Is he reading all his thoughts? No, he is a B-rank hunter, and he is only an E+ rank hunter. How can he have something that can only be seen on an S-rank hunter? The protagonist's fist hit his face, and he flew back, stopping with his sword. He thought this was impossible. He studied Siwoo's strength through YouTube videos, but he couldn't believe it. Then he smiled madly and shouted that he would kill him. A powerful aura surrounded his sword. He used a technique called the Aurora Sword. The protagonist shouted that this was not it. He thought, was he giving it his all? Now that it came to this, he had no choice. He also gave it his all. His muscles were torn. He couldn't hold on for long, but he had to win. The next second, his body was enveloped in a powerful energy. He instantly appeared next to his opponent and swung his fist. The powerful blow caused an explosion. After a while, Lee Minjung came to the scene of the destruction and ordered her subordinates to close the area. They needed to check if there was anyone inside. The subordinates agreed. One of them shouted that they were from the inspection bureau. Is anyone here? MC came out to them, and Minjung asked if he was Hunter Siwoo. He confirmed it. She handed over a document and introduced herself as the commander of the 4th Squad of Guards of the Inspection Bureau. She asked him to come with them. In the interrogation room, she folded her arms and asked if Hunter Dokal had tried to kill Siwoo. He showed the video as evidence. She confirmed that he had. Siwoo was known as a traitless awakener. The guards were the police for the hunters, but they hunted criminals and murderers. The protagonist thought that the squad leaders were A-class hunters. Her aura was like that of a killer. He asked if the trait rank was related to the hunter's rank. She replied that she knew he was E+. He said that it was, but why did he have to answer the question? He was the victim. She nodded and apologized. She was used to suspecting people because of her job. They would handle the case based on the video footage from the Arachne dungeon and the abandoned construction site. Dokal might never see the sun again. She offered to finish the investigation. He stood up and left, saying that he was leaving everything in her hands. The door closed, and a few moments later it opened. Jun Sua rushed into the office and asked if Minjung was inside. Hunter Siwoo had just left, and she thought she wouldn't be there. She was surprised. It was strange. The inspection bureau guard asked again. Excuse me? She asked Sua what her rank was. Smiling awkwardly, she asked why it was important. She had recently been promoted to B rank. The next second, she felt like she was pressed to the floor. Looking up, she exclaimed in surprise, "The squad leader?" Minjim stood up and said that as expected, it was impossible. She asked, "Isn't it obvious?" It turns out that the squad leader is an unusual guard. There are rumors that she will be promoted to S rank, known as a butcher. She explained that Hunter Siwoo didn't feel anything. Sua sat up in surprise and asked, "What? Isn't Hunter Siwoo an E+ rank?" Minjim noted that this was strange. The guard, crouching on the floor, asked why he was sent away. Hunters who hide their rank. She interrupted her and replied that it was because he wasn't strange. He had a human scent. Sua, looking at the closed door, asked in surprise, "What kind of nonsense?" Meanwhile, the protagonist walked through the city and thought, "It's good that it's over, but there's no telling when it will happen again." If his YouTube channel gets more popular, it could attract the attention of criminal organizations. At his current level, even Dokal is a serious opponent. Looking at his phone, he thought that without energy, knowledge of Dokal's behavior and habits, and insight, he would have died long ago. The most important thing is super strength. But it doesn't increase. Why is it still at 1%? Then, he remembered that he won a personal training with Hercules. Looking at his phone screen, he was surprised. Hercules only has one subscriber. It was worth winning, right? Soon, he was sitting on a bench when Hercules appeared from the phone. He pointed at the protagonist and asked, "Is he a human? How can a human be on his channel?" The protagonist asked, "Then it won't work?" He scratched his head and replied that if this continues, he won't be able to hold a personal training. The MC said that means he won't be able to accept. Hercules countered that it wasn't that. He couldn't go where the protagonist was, so he couldn't do the training himself. The protagonist wondered how he had connected to GodTube. The blonde guy who had left him the phone, the white-haired guy he had fought. Hercules suggested starting with something simple, like pulling and tearing off the Minotaur's horns in one motion. He needed to start now. The back muscles were especially important. MC clarified, "The back muscles, right?" He sighed and replied that the muscles on the back of the body weren't just the trapezius, but also the triceps, brachioradialis and others. These muscles were important for the overall balance of the body. The system reported that he had learned about the perfect muscles. The mastery of super strength had increased slightly. God kicked the ground, covering it with cracks, and shouted, "Then we need to make bold moves." The protagonist didn't understand what that was. Hercules explained, "Now? That's what divine martial arts are. He created it." The protagonist clarified, "Divine martial arts?" Hercules replied that it was nothing special. He simply collected all his fighting techniques and systematized it. Was it the one he used when he crushed the Hydra? Anyway, the muscles of the back of the body are also important in these techniques. The lower body, like a pillar, supports everything. What would happen if the pillars fell when building a building? MC assumed that it would collapse. Hercules kicked the ground again and shouted that the same thing happens to the body. The protagonist understood what this meant. The next second, information came that he had mastered the physical science of super strength. Super strength mastery increased slightly. Hercules then said that he would tell you about an exercise method that suits him. The basis of breathing is to exhale when you leave the ground. The protagonist began to do push-ups while looking at the screen of the phone attached to the holder. He thought, "This point is much easier than he thought." Hercules remarked that he didn't care about breathing. He should look at himself before speaking. It was important that he did it right. The MC replied that he understood. Then came the messages that he had done the super strength exercises, and the skill had increased a little. This happened several times. Meanwhile, Doc Gu was getting ready for work at the computer. The protagonist, having attached a video, signed that today's concept was a speed run. He leaves the editing to her. She sighed and thought that her boss was a good person, but a little unusual. What strategy did he have this time? Then she turned on the video, and the protagonist in a bat suit greeted the subscribers of the World Conqueror channel. Vampire bats live in the cave they see behind him. He pointed his finger at the camera and said, "Will they ask why he is here?" To show new content for the World Conqueror channel. This is nothing more than a speedrun raid. The editor thought if she chooses an editing point here, she will add sound and effects. But why would he film vampire bats? They are numerous and live in harsh conditions with poor visibility, making it difficult to film. But it would really attract attention. The MC then said that after investigating, the current and best record was 58 seconds. It was set by S-rank hunter Yukana from the Fire Witch channel. Today he will try to break the record. The Vampire Bat World Conqueror speedrun raid starts right now. Doc Gu said that she will edit the timer for this part. She was surprised when she saw that he suddenly started doing gymnastics. The next second, the protagonist swung his leg and shouted, "Banquet! Challenge!" He kicked the ground, leaving cracks, and the editor stared at it in surprise. A pile of rocks gathered in one place, and she wondered if it was possible to collapse the dungeon. The protagonist put his hand on his forehead and said that he had to get ingredients, but the raid was already completed. Daku was confused about what just happened. But since he was a good person, she decided not to ask questions. After a while, he checked his profile and exclaimed, "Hooray, great stats!" Then he wondered, by the way, did Yukana from the Fire Witch channel, who has 41 million subscribers, leave a comment herself? He saw her running in panic when she found out that first place was taken away from her. The fact that the Fire Witch wrote a comment herself already caused a huge effect. If he ever did this again, he was guaranteed to have 1 million viewers. He needed to calm down. At times like this, he should make even more provocative videos. He noticed that his current superpower level was 2.01%. He thought that after the individual training from Hercules, his skill, which had never increased before, had exceeded 2%. Grinning, he realized that he could already destroy a dungeon with vampire bats with 2%. If it increased even more. Divine martial arts? He would decide to ask Hercules to teach him this. Hercules appeared on the screen again and answered briefly, no. MC wanted to explain that he would learn from him during individual training, but Hercules interrupted again, no. The protagonist was surprised and asked, but he won, right? Hercules shook his head and explained that individual training and divine martial arts were different things. Even the names were different. For a person like him, gaining muscle mass was not the only task. Because divine martial arts were a method he created specifically for his strength. He then flexed his muscles and added that without his superpower, he would not be able to use it. The protagonist asked, but he was using his superpower? Hercules frowned and exclaimed he was using his superpower? He pointed his finger at the protagonist. The protagonist replied that he was currently in private training. Hercules was indignant. It was just private training, and not to learn his superpower? MC was surprised. What? But he learned his superpower? Hercules replied, no way. The protagonist thought about it and asked, is it possible to learn godly abilities on GodTube? Or was what he learned not Hercules' superpower? He asked to wait, and the next second Hercules was right behind him. He almost completely got out of the phone and grabbing the protagonist by the shoulders, exclaimed again, how did he do it? So he learned the power by subscribing to his channel? What about the other gods? MC confirmed that this was exactly the case and asked if it was weird. Hercules replied that it was ridiculous. He gets the power of the gods by subscribing to their channels? That's absurd. The protagonist said that it worked for him. Then Hercules asked him to think about how he got connected to GodTube in the first place. He was an ordinary person, with no godly powers. The protagonist thought about it and said that it was because he had opened up such a possibility. Hercules thought about it again and remembered 2 guys he had met. It seemed to him that they were also connected to GodTube. MC asked if those who subscribed to GodTube could come to their world. He replied that he couldn't come personally, because their dimensions don't intersect. The protagonist asked if the GodTube account was his own. God confirmed that it was a manager's account. The protagonist asked if he knew who this manager was. God replied that he knew several, but it wasn't worth getting godly powers just for subscribing to a manager's account. Otherwise, managers would become gods of the universe. The protagonist offered to accept him as a student, but God refused, explaining that it was too much trouble. The protagonist reminded him that he had already learned superpowers, but God objected that these were different things. He was not ready to share divine martial arts. The protagonist asked to explain what subscribers on GodTube meant. God replied that it was an element of divinity. The more subscribers, the higher the divine status. The protagonist was surprised that subscribers were the only thing God was interested in. Besides muscles, the protagonist offered a deal. If he got 100 subscribers, God would teach him martial arts. Hercules was surprised how this was possible, because he could not come in person. The protagonist assured him that he could handle it. After some time, God appeared from the phone and became his faithful servant. The protagonist offered to tell him about interesting videos. God was surprised and asked what he should teach him now. The protagonist reminded that God promised divine martial arts. Hercules agreed, but first he needed to calm down. The protagonist asked what the followers meant. God replied that it was people's trust. The more people knew about him, the higher his status. The protagonist asked if he understood correctly. God nodded and said that he would teach him divine martial arts. The MC asked him to speak calmly, like before. God smiled and agreed. He started by training his brain muscles. The next second, the hero grabbed his head and cried out in pain. Hercules walked forward, and the protagonist could not see his movements. The system reported that he had mastered divine martial arts. His super strength mastery had increased significantly. He thought about it. The mastery increased by 0.1%, and then by another 1.1%, and this is SSS rank? Hercules said that he was not sure if he could handle it. He cautiously warned that perhaps the protagonist's soul level was still insufficient. If he used divine martial arts in this state, his mind might not be able to withstand it. He needed to develop mental strength first. The protagonist understood. Hercules was talking about the power of the spirit. This means that a strong psyche is needed to master the divine techniques. The protagonist asked why Hercules did not say this right away. He scratched his head and replied that this is not usually said. The MC was surprised. Can't he learn? Hercules replied that it is usually impossible, but perhaps in his case it will work. The protagonist was surprised. In his case, Hercules explained that he can obtain the power of the gods. If he masters the power of mental might, it will support Hercules' extraordinary strength. Jesus, Buddha, Confucius. Hercules recommended subscribing to Master Confucius's channel. The protagonist thought, does this mean that he needs to subscribe and pay a monthly fee? He looked at the account balance, 153,450,001. The protagonist was surprised. He only has 153 million? He remembered that the Hua channel subscription cost 100 million and a billion for a month. He would go broke with that kind of spending. Is it worth it? At that moment Soyun entered the smithy. She waved and said that she was back. She was holding a bag. It was the ogre tendons that the protagonist wanted. He asked how much it cost. Soyun replied that it was exactly 113 million won. The protagonist took the bag with tears in his eyes. Soyun thanked him for using her products. She asked what he would do with the tendons. He replied that he wanted to make equipment. The ogre was an A+ rank monster, and the protagonist could not hunt it himself yet. But in order to master divine martial arts, he needed 1 billion won. That meant he needed to use good materials to make equipment so that he could sell it. He would also be able to train with the equipment. When would he make equipment for himself? Money was his enemy. An eternal enemy. But it was time to get started. The protagonist picked up the tendons, and at that moment Guang approached Soyun. He was surprised to see her there. And then he cried out in surprise, watching the hero. Something brightly glowed in his hands. He raised it in front of him. The system reported that the protagonist had created a one-time product. Divine metallurgy mastery had noticeably increased. MC thought, despite all his efforts, is this still a one-time item? The owner of the forge ran up to him in surprise. How did he do this? He turned to Soyun and asked how much this item could be sold for. She replied that it was beyond her capabilities. There was no one among their customers who could buy such equipment. The protagonist looked at the gloves in his hands and wondered if there was any point in making them if he couldn't sell them. He decided to subscribe to Confucius, pay for a subscription to Huatou and Soa's medicine. He then handed her the glove and asked her not to worry, but to sell this instead. It's still a disposable item. She was surprised. A disposable item? But after taking the glove, she smiled and said she would do her best. Then she asked if she could take his name. The protagonist was surprised. His name? She replied that she wanted to put the glove up for auction. He was surprised. An auction? After some time the auction took place. The host announced that the next lot was equipment that even Master Guang could not help but admire. Discussions began. Could this be the work of the renowned Master Aurelian? Then, the host announced that the lot was gloves made from ogre tendons. It is extremely durable and does not break. Perhaps because it is made from monster tendons, the evaluation results show that the gloves strengthen the wearer. The audience was surprised. Enchanted equipment? Only Master Aurelian can create such a thing? But then the host said that it is not enchanted equipment. The boost is very small, about 5%, but it is still a special effect equipment. The gloves are effective as a secondary weapon. The host continued that judging by the audience's reaction, she might get beaten to death if she drags out the auction, so they begin. The starting price is 10 million won, with an increment of 5 million won. The audience shouted, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50 million. Then the host announced that the increment would increase to 10 million. The audience shouted, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 million. The price rose to 50 million won. The bids kept rising. The host looked around and offered 350 million won. No one answered. She asked if there was a higher bid. A second later, the number 2 billion was announced. She exclaimed in surprise, Cherin? Then she was surprised again and shouted, 2 billion? No more? Minjung held up the sign and bid 2.1 billion. Everyone was amazed by her presence. Cherin held up the sign again and said 3 billion. She answered, 3.1 billion. The bids skyrocketed to 4 billion. The host asked if there was a higher bid, 4.1 billion. 2. Sold. The gloves went for 4 billion. Cherin went up on stage. Soon, while in the forge, Soyun approached the protagonist and remarked that she never thought it could sell for that much. He looked at the account balance and thought, this is crazy. The winning bid is 4 billion. After deducting the commission, tax, and service fee, Soyun received 3.6 billion. He hugged her and said he loved her. She was surprised. He should wait a minute, his strength. He let go of her, scratched his head and added, maybe he got too excited. Now he would gladly give her something for her troubles. She put her hands on her chest and replied, he had already paid her for her services. Thanks to him, their company became VIPs in the auction house. That was enough. He turned to Paul Guang and he waved his hand, saying that he didn't mind either. He did it anyway. She said that he didn't do anything. The protagonist decided to teach him how to beat the Allegro rhythm. He looked at the screen and saw a subscription charge for Confucius's channel. He thought if he wanted to learn divine martial arts, he should subscribe. He couldn't be stingy. The system notified him of the subscription. After a while, he was sitting at the table with his sister. She asked if this place was too expensive. He replied that they should try it at least once in their lives. He thought, 600,000 won? Who cares? I still have 2.6 billion. Now Huato's channel was worth 100 million per subscription, while Confucius's was worth 1 billion. The total was 1.1 billion. He decided to stop thinking about it. Soa started looking around. He thought he would watch GodTube until the food arrived. He looked at Confucius's channel and was surprised. 34,000 subscribers? That was a lot. Did all of Confucius's students subscribe to his channel? He thought that school networks existed here too. He said that learning divine martial arts required brain muscles. He decided that it would be the SSS rank. Since it was not a combat job, this rank meant something more than divine martial arts. To improve one's skill level, one must first study the video and understand the material better. He played the video, and Confucius said, "A gentleman takes care of those around him." The MC felt bored. The system reported that he had mastered the basics of Confucianism. The level of benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and gentlemanliness increased slightly. After a while, Hercules said, he had acquired the brain muscles of Master Confucius, but not completely. The protagonist replied that he needed to improve his skill level. The god repeated that divine martial arts were not suitable for his level. It's like changing the laws of the world, not just using superpowers. He will draw mana by concentrating on the veins and pressure. Mana is the source of existence. In order to use it more actively, one needs an amplification organ that projects intent and makes it easier to influence mana. Eastern gods call it the chi center. The protagonist probably thinks this is boring and wonders what this is all about. The next second, a bright light flashed from the phone, and the protagonist, covering his face with his hand, shouted, "What the hell?" Hercules poked him in the head and said, he wants to learn the divine art. He wants to gain strength, not learn complex concepts. Isn't he right? The protagonist agreed, and Hercules continued. He came up with a way to learn divine martial arts more easily. The answer lies in his muscles. If the body is in bad shape, the head will also suffer. He will learn complex concepts as his muscles grow. He should leave the knowledge that gives him a headache to the muscles. At the SH Group headquarters, Dasang reported that he had heard about the equipment purchase. Sharon confirmed it and added that she was very pleased. He heard that the cost was 4 billion. She replied that it was not comparable to Master Aurelian's sword, but it was still an excellent support equipment. She looked at her gauntlet and said that she felt that her skills had increased with this one item. Her grandfather was happy and offered to help if needed. Sharon bowed, thanked him and said that she was ready to raid the S-rank dungeon. Meanwhile, the protagonist lay on the platform, breathing heavily. He thought that he could not keep track of what was happening. The divine art he had to master seemed incomprehensible. He glanced at his phone screen and wondered if he could level up. He remembered the words from the video where the participant asked Confucius if there was a way not to lose a fight that was impossible to win. Confucius replied that there was such a way, never ending the fight. The protagonist rose to his feet and sighed. He remembered Hercules, the hero who surpassed God. Wouldn't Hercules fight? Wouldn't he put in the effort? Wouldn't he be disappointed? Divine martial arts seemed unattainable, but he understood that this art required endless effort. He concentrated, took a stance and lunged. The system reported that an unbending will permeated his body. The level of benevolence, righteousness, decency, and wisdom of a gentleman increased slightly. He opened his eyes and looked at the traces of his training in surprise. The system reported that he had mastered the martial art of Hercules. He awkwardly scratched the back of his head, laughed, and said that it seemed like he needed to find a private training center. How much money would it cost? Meanwhile, Doku was preparing for editing. MC sent her a message with a video, asking her to edit it for uploading to GodTube. She thought it was a video about a vampire bat, like last time. The Fire Witch set a record on her channel, taking first place. The record was 11 seconds. The attack was lightning fast. The protagonist uploaded the video and addressed the viewers. He welcomed them. "Dear viewers, he is the conqueror of the world. Today, they will try to defeat the fire witch, Miss Yukana. Now he will show them how to do it. I wonder why he is targeting her? If he tries, he will probably get fried. He can't go unprepared, so he will tell them a strategy to defeat Yukana.